Good morning and welcome to the launch of the European Fair Pricing Network, the Efpn. An extra warm welcome to His Excellency, the Minister of Health and Care Services from Norway, Bent Høie. My name is Guy Muller, Public Affairs Officer for the Dutch Cancer Society, and I am the founder of this initiative. The idea for the European Fair Pricing Network came to me when I read an article by Dr. Wim van Harten on actual cost of cancer drugs in Lancet Oncology. He showed unexplainable price differences between countries. The poor are not getting their medicine cheap, while some rich overpay. It seemed to me unexplainable, not transparent, a barrier for access, and most of all, not fair. Not fair for patients, not fair for payers, and not fair for the public. I decided then to call Wim van Harten, and by answering my call, he, without knowing it then, became the co-founder, and here we stand today. He wasn't the only one who was on my call list. Anna Prokopkova, an outstanding policy expert at the ECL, health economist Jes Søgaard, and Jesper Fisker, the business-minded CEO of the Danish Cancer Society, Nora Franse from the NKI, the Netherlands Cancer Institute, all brought their expertise to the table, and together we created the Efpn, the European Fair Pricing Network. I would also like to thank them and also thank the research team with Simone Kohle and Julie van Koppenhol and Edwin Wagena, our project manager. And last but not least, I want to thank all the brave cancer leagues that made the Efpn possible. You can see them here on the slide. The Efpn combines the best of two worlds, doing research to ensure high quality data and advocacy to translate findings into political asks, working in tandem within a broad network, all to ensure real change for patients. It is therefore with great pride and enthusiasm that we are launching the European Fair Pricing Network today, together with all partners, taking this first step for patients towards achieving fair prices for cancer medicines today. It is my great pleasure to introduce the moderator of the day, a renowned journalist at the British Medical Journal and The Lancet, Ms. Jackie Thornton.
Thank you very much indeed, Guy. I'm delighted to be here at this important launch today. And the fact that so many of you have registered 440 people at the last count, it underlines what a serious issue we are discussing. In my career as a health journalist, the one common question I've been asked at all the publications I've worked for has been, why are people not always able to access the life-saving medicines that could help them? And in 30 years, no one's been able to come up with an answer. So today I believe we have an opportunity to move forward on this and work together through the Efpn to ensure that cancer patients get the best possible treatment at a price which is fair for all. So I want to mention some housekeeping. This is a view-only event. That means that you'll be able to contribute via an interactive Q&A. You can type your questions into the Q&A function. And I will try to make sure that as many questions as possible are answered. And if you please could mention who you are on the Q&A, we won't be taking any anonymous questions. You can see all the questions coming through and you can vote for which ones you would most like me to ask. The event, as you can see, is being streamed on YouTube, so you can pass on to colleagues who have missed it. And if you are experiencing any problems at all with your technology, please do privately message Gina ECL through the chat box. So what are the objectives of the event? Well, first, we want to tell you more about the Efpn. Its aims are to increase transparency in the pharmaceutical system by providing reliable European data through research and using that data in its advocacy work at the highest level. Second, we want to put its aims into context. We're at a stage now where new drugs appear to be more and more expensive, where even the richest economies have difficulty in enabling patient access. This is not sustainable. So today we have a range of perspectives from the European Commission, which has just launched the EU Pharma Strategy last week, to the Organisation of European Cancer Institutes and the European Patients Forum, as well as the Efpn's chair, co-founder and partners. As I said, we'll have the Q&A session at 10:45 and we'll be finished by 11:30. I will introduce each speaker in turn as we go along. However, I would like, first of all, it's my honour to introduce Bent Høie, the Minister of Health and Care Services in Norway, who will give his welcome address entitled "The Effect of Cancer, Medicine Prices on National Healthcare Budgets and the Need for More Cooperation." Minister, may I invite you to take the floor?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank you all for attending the launch of the European Fair Pricing Network. This network is being established to address one of the most important issues for us as health ministers around the world: increasing market transparency as part of the access to medicines agenda. I want to be very clear from the start. High prices, especially for new medicines, threaten the sustainability of our health system. At the end of the day, this is a threat to patients. Lack of transparency in the pharmaceutical market is undermining public trust to our health system. It also makes it more difficult for health authorities to publicly justify their decisions to offer or not to offer medicines to patients in the health system based on universal health coverage like ours. The WHO resolution to increase transparency in the market for medicine is a game changer. As Minister of Health, I consider the resolution to be very important. Even a high-income country like Norway has limited resources to spend on high-value medicines. We must allocate our health budget in a way that maximizes health outcomes for patients. When a decision is made to offer a new medicine in Norway, the medicine must be made accessible for all patients that need it. In 2019, Norway authorized 64 new medicines and treatments after health technology assessment were carried out. Approximately 40% of these were cancer medicines. Repeated assessments were needed for 4 of the cancer medicines in order for the pharmaceutical company to bring the price down to an acceptable level. Despite spending 10.5% of our GDP on healthcare in 2019, we still had to reject 22% of new medicines and treatments due to very high prices. This means that we were not able to offer these medicines to patients who need them. This represents a loss of good health and a risk of eroding public confidence to our system. Like many other countries, Norway accepts secrecy regarding the actual prices paid. We would like this to change. We have a momentum now following the adoption of the WHO resolution. We need increased transparency on research and development costs and how they translate into actual prices. COVID-19 has also showed that we need more transparency in the whole supply chain. Time has come to balance the power between health systems and the pharma industry. To challenge industry, we need to stand together and work together, both government and the NGOs. I call for a process that will give us an agreed social contract between pharmaceutical companies and governments. This is why we need initiatives like the European Fair Pricing Network. Using research, this initiative seeks to collect and analyze reliable European data needed to measure challenges in the current pharmaceutical markets. It will develop new ways of organizing innovation and sustainable supply of effective cancer medicines. The finding will be translated into a concrete proposal directed at both national and European decision makers. I'm also very pleased to see that the European Commission has adopted its Pharmaceutical Strategy. It contains measures relating to access to affordable medicines with the objective to increase the value for money of medical expenses. The Commission states that, I quote, lack of transparency of research cost or return on investment can influence decisions that impact affordability and ultimately access for patients. I could not agree more and look forward to working with the Commission in the implementation of this important work. Mr. Sylvain Gouraud from DG Sante will present the strategy afterward, and I am excited to hear what he has to say. I already note, however, that we are on the same page on important issues, including the lack of transparency, in particular in R&D costs and on costing principle. Better understanding and greater clarity are fundamental as a basis for policy debates on the pricing of medicines and fair return on research contributions. How the transparency agenda is implemented into the revision of the EU regulation on orphan drug is also something we are eagerly awaiting, since these rules regulate many of the new and expensive cancer medicines. Norway strongly supports implementation of the WHO resolution. In cooperation with the WHO European Office, we will host a meeting in Oslo in 2022, where we, together with the pharma industry, want to discuss a mutually agreed social contract. Civil society and patients' organization has an important role to play if we were going to achieve this. Our objectives cannot be reached without creating a common understanding of the challenges and defining some measures with patients' organizations like the European Cancer League, health professionals organization, politicians, academia, and the industry present. Nevertheless, information on research and development cost is imperative to increase access to medicines and strengthen the balance in the pharmaceutical market. Therefore, the European Fair Pricing Network plays a crucial part in reaching our common goal. And I wish you great success in your upcoming work. And then back to you, Madam Moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that talk. I think it was a really amazing analysis and thinking about how we've got a threat to patients, a loss potentially of patient confidence because of this secrecy and lack of transparency. So thank you very much indeed for that, Bent Hoy. I'm now going to move to Sylvain Gouraud, who is the Head of Unit Health Systems, Medical Products and Innovation at DG Sante at the European Commission. He'll be presenting the EU Pharma Strategy in relation to the Commission's planned activities to achieve affordability of medicines and how it can be used by the Efpn partners. Thank you, Sylvain.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to join this event and to be able to present to you this very important policy paper the Commission presented last week. And thank you to the Minister for what he already said, welcoming this initiative, and for the important messages he's also passed from his experience in Norway. Indeed, quite a lot of what he said are challenges that the new pharmaceutical strategy for Europe is trying to address. This is in response to a request that was made by President von der Leyen when this new commission was established, a request she made to Commissioner Kyriakides in a mission letter to actually go and have another look at our pharmaceutical system and provide a strategy to address some of the long-standing weaknesses that have been noticed, some systemic and structural issues, but also, given the most recent COVID crisis, this policy paper is also looking at some specific vulnerabilities that have been highlighted during the crisis. So the main challenges that are addressed by the strategy, they concern affordability, accessibility, availability of medicines, and the need to reduce shortages and to secure supply chain. But as well, they also look at, or they also address challenges in relation to the need to support innovation and to support need-driven innovation, to tackle the environmental sustainability challenges of medicines production and consumption, and also look at the global regulatory cooperation to improve global quality standards and level playing field at international level. And it also aims at supporting the European pharma industry to face these challenges and to remain a world leader. Next slide, please. The strategy contributes to broader union objectives, and it is therefore articulated with other Commission initiatives, such as Digital Europe, Horizon Europe, the Green Deal, the European Strategy, Industrial Strategy. And more specific to the health area, it also links strongly to the cancer plan that we will adopt in a few weeks. The European health data space, those two are other two key actions in the mission letter. And of course, all the work that we have been developing in response to the crisis and to preparedness and response to health threats. Overall, it will also contribute to achieving the EU's commitments to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and also the European Pillar of Social Rights in access to care and access to medicines. So it's also a key of the strategy is also a key element in what we now call the European Health Union, which President von der Leyen called for in the State of the Union speech in September. So the strategy, the Pharma Strategy, is in a way the second pillar of the European Health Union. We had on the 11th of November a certain number of policy proposals to improve the response to health threat. We had the Pharma Strategy on 24th of November, and the third pillar of this European Health Union will be the cancer plan in January, which will also go through a holistic approach from prevention to care and treatments, and also indeed will link with the strategy in relation to access to cancer care and cancer medicines. So to address these challenges, the pharmaceutical strategy covers the full life cycle of a medicine. This includes a broad scope of different areas, from research and development of medicines to testing, to trials, to marketing authorization, manufacturing aspects, health technology assessment, pricing and reimbursement decisions, access from the point of view of patients, access to market from the point of view of industry, market exclusivity and intellectual property protection, and all sorts of incentives to support innovation, and also the need to secure and improved access to market for generics and biosimilars. So all the different aspects are covered, and it's this strategy builds on synergies with other policy areas such as research and innovation, industrial policy, competition, trade, but also environmental policy. Next slide, please. So the strategy, as any kind of policy paper the Commission produces, has some discussions of the challenges and presentation of the of the situation and the diagnosis, and then in relation to that, a certain number of legislative proposals or measures and non-legislative actions are proposed with a certain number of specific dates for them to be delivered. So I just don't want to go into too many details here. I invite you to look at the document that was published last week, and that's available on the Commission website. I guess the most important of the action that is announced is that we will endeavor to evaluate and revise the basic EU legislation on pharmaceuticals in a way that we look at all the different challenges and we see how the legislation is or is not fit for purpose to support the objectives of innovation, accessibility, availability, affordability, but also environmental sustainability of production and security of supply. So the idea would be that we also look at the different aspects of the legislation in relation to incentives, in relation to the life cycle management of medicines, in relation to increasing or improving the digitalization of the process, in relation to addressing shortages, in relation to quality, and also in relation to ensuring preparedness to new manufacturing technologies and new types of products. So all these different aspects will be factored into a big evaluation of the legislation. But in addition to this evaluation of the legislation, we also provided in the text a certain number of non-legislative action, policy measures that relate more to cooperation between the national authorities. Also on R&D, also in relation to antimicrobial resistance, also in relation to strategic autonomy, and we're proposing in this area to launch an action that would identify very specifically the vulnerabilities of the global supply chains and to propose tailored measures specifically addressing these vulnerabilities. We also have in the strategy a big chapter on international activities, which look at global supply chains improvement, and also multilateral cooperation in international bodies. So if I move now on, yes, the next slide, please. If I zoom on the affordability aspect of the strategy, well, this is clearly and from the beginning one of the a key objective of the strategy, and it was actually mentioned, the word affordability, in the mission letter itself. So this is already from the origin of the project, one of the aspects that was to be covered. So the strategy hopefully provides in the text of the strategy an analysis of the challenges that relate to affordability. And the minister mentioned already a few in relation to new expensive medicines, the increase of pharmaceutical expenditure, the financial burden on health systems, but also the financial burden on households and through the out-of-pocket payment process, and the financial and heavy burden for individuals. Also, some questions and uncertainties from health systems authority about the actual value for money of what they're paying for, of the actual cost effectiveness of certain products. Also, some questions that are there about the actual capacity of competition to play its role in getting to lower prices and increasing affordability, and some obstacles that could possibly exist to entry of generics and biosimilars product that necessarily would lead to lower prices. So to address some of these challenges, of course, many of the competence lays primarily with the member states because they are strongly linked to the National Health Systems Organization and to the national pricing and reimbursement policies. But the EU-wide legislative framework also directly impacts affordability challenges. And even in areas of national competency, we believe that there is a strong added value in cooperative actions between member states and in considering non-legislative measures such as guidelines or principles to support national policymaking. This will remain national policymaking, but this could be done in a more cooperative way and learning from each other. For example, public procurement policies, the way health systems procure and purchase medicines is often quoted as an area where common approach or additional guidance on practical modalities could be developed jointly. Also, this was mentioned by the minister on the issue of transparency of R&D costing, the methodology for costing, and this is another area where working together could make sense. Also on developing cooperation across the market entry process between different bodies that are involved, the medicines agencies, the HTA bodies, and the pricing and reimbursement authorities. This is certainly also an area where working together makes sense. So we will be looking at affordability challenges through the evaluation revision of the legislation, trying to assess what are the market effects of the legislative framework and how it impacts on affordability. And we'll try to address this through possibly a revision of the legislation. And the strategy text is quite detailed about what that would mean. And then we will be looking at increasing cooperation supported by the Commission between the national authorities to develop mutual learning and best practices on the issues I mentioned. This will be led by a group of the member states authorities in charge of pricing and reimbursement and public health care payers that we are relaunching and that we expect to be the place where this coordination, cooperation are going to develop. This is one of the flagship initiatives under the strategy. And this, of course, will build on existing partnerships and voluntary collaboration that have existed in the last few years, such as Beneluxa, Valletta, and others. And also, it will also build on existing cooperation we've had in place, such as the Europid collaboration or the work that has been developed with the OECD in the last few years. So over the next 3 years and beyond, we hope to put in place a certain number of cooperation mechanisms to help national public authorities to improve their capacities and take better decisions. Next slide, please. Oh, well, that's the collaboration slide. Thank you. Well, this is just a slide to briefly, before I conclude, tell you that we're looking for this is not a Commission strategy. It's meant to be a European strategy, an EU strategy. And this is actually going to be developing ideas and cooperation mechanisms and revision of the legislation in a way that we involve all the different actors and with a strong focus on member states authorities and their involvement in delivering the new agenda. And this is so it's all levels of government, but also across disciplines and regulatory competence with a life cycle approach. But and there is, of course, a strong role for stakeholders to join this collaboration. They were very strongly involved in the preparation of the strategy with open public consultation and meetings with different organizations, including those that are here today. And I would like to thank all the organizations that got involved in the preparation of the strategy, sending input and concrete ideas. Now the network you're launching today, this and endeavors like this one and others, that they're very important because they can guide and support the work that authorities are developing. And especially your intention to combine research and evidence making with policy actions and advocacy is to be welcomed. So we're looking forward to the input that you will provide and suggestions you will make and any results of the project and studies that you will develop. So this would certainly be very valuable for the work we foresee with the member states in the field of affordability. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Sylvain. And I think we heard there that the challenges of high-priced medicines, it's not just for states, it's also for individuals through out-of-pocket payments, and the collaboration and working together is the way forward. So let's move on now to the introduction of the European Fair Pricing Network. We'll be hearing from the organisation's chair, Ingrid Ross, who is the Secretary General of the Norwegian Cancer Society, and also Dr. Wim van Harten, Chief Executive Officer of the Rinstad Hospital, the Netherlands Cancer Institute. So Ingrid, may I pass the floor to you?
Thank you so much, Jackie, and good morning, everyone. So there should be no doubt. The reason for this initiative is that cancer patients in Europe should have access to the latest drugs on the market. Over the last couple of years, we have seen tremendous progress when it comes to new treatment for cancer. Survival rates have increased all over, and many patients that did not have any treatment options can now expect to live for a long period of time. But unfortunately, not all cancer patients have access to new treatment, and many experience that there is a delay from a new drug is on the market and until it is reimbursed by the national health authorities. One such example in Norway is a treatment for a type of lung cancer, our most deadly cancer. When our national system for managed introduction of new health technologies took a decision in June 2019, they said that they wanted to use this medicine, but the price was too high. There has not been a reassessment, and our neighboring countries have all used this medicine, and studies show a very good effect. In Norway, many of these cancer patients die. And the most important aspect is pricing of new drugs. And that is what this initiative is about. The patients are being held in a kind of a hostage situation in a negotiation between the industry, which seeks to maximize profits, and the authorities, which have a given budget and must prioritize within this. Both parties have incentives to delay the processes if they see opportunities to pressure the other party. And since the price and the negotiations are secret, the patients and we as patient organizations have no opportunity to advance our case. The authorities and the population have little insight into the industry's pricing strategies, and we lose bargaining power. We still see examples of the industry saying that Norway has received the best price without having any opportunity to follow up on this claim. Also, in recent years, prices of cancer medicines have become subject to an increasing concern of policymakers, taxpayers, and patients. And we see some worrying trends. The aging population, the growing incidence of cancer, the larger demands for medical interventions, the growing healthcare spendings, and ever-increasing prices of new treatments. And all combined, this is posing a large pressure on healthcare budget. Next slide, please. So these trends are resulting in unequal access and availability to adequate treatment throughout the whole of Europe. And it is also resulting in an inability to provide population-wide access to new medicines due to unaffordability. Next slide, please. So therefore, we call for action to secure sustainable access to medicines. Countries need to work together to address common problems and optimize their resources to address the needs of their citizens. And we need a greater accountability and transparency to be imposed on the pharmaceutical system. So why did we, the cancer societies, feel the need to act? As cancer societies, we have a special obligation towards patients. They are the reason why I go to work every day, and all my colleagues are the same. Also, we receive donations from the general public to fund research to support the search for new medicines and cures for cancer. Unfortunately, we often see that these medicines do not reach the patients in a timely manner, often due to their high prices. And this is why in this year, 2020, 10 cancer societies decided to team up with research institutes to build the European Fair Pricing Network. The Efpn aims to achieve fair prices for cancer medicines and work towards a sustainable pharmaceutical market, which produces accessible, affordable, and truly innovative medicines for cancer patients. So the Efpn partners are ready to invest 1 million euros in the next 4 years to collect and analyze reliable European data needed to measure the challenges in the current pharmaceutical markets and develop new ways of organizing innovation and sustainable supply of effective medicines. So in short, the Efpn strives to do these 3 things. First, secure timely access to best available medicines to patients who need them. Secondly, achieve a fair price for cancer medicines. And third, increase transparency in the pharmaceutical system. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Wim van Harten from the Netherlands Cancer Institute, who has worked closely with our team to develop the Efpn project since its inception. So Dr. van Harten will introduce insights into the upcoming research of the network. Wim, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. There's still an echo, but it went away now. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. I start with a short explanation what the relevance is of the topic in view of the promising new treatments and the impressive pipeline of new treatments that we see. We also see that the relevant part of cancer drugs compared to the total cancer expenditure in Europe is outpacing the total volume. So this threatens the sustainability of the future system in economic terms. Next slide, please. And when you look at actual pricing in Europe, we did a research project some 4 years ago in 15 European countries among the OCI network, and we found impressive differences of actual prices between countries, sometimes raising up to 100% difference without a logical explanation. And this raises questions on the actual system of pricing in Europe and also on the access to drugs all over Europe. We also did research in surveys among patient representative organizations and providers. And we see that impressive percentages of providers indicate that their budgets are insufficient to cover all the drugs, but also, and that is more serious, that treatment choices are affected by financial limitations when it comes to drugs. And we published this in the Journal of Cancer Policy under the title "The Tip of the Iceberg," because we also noted that representatives of patient organizations, up to 75%, indicated that they think that treatment choices are affected by financial limitations. And moreover, that they also think that most patients are not aware of the fact. And that may even be more disturbing. Next, please. So what we aim to do is that we aim to improve access to novel cancer treatments and reimbursement decisions, that we look into national coverage and reimbursement policies, and that we also look into timely access, because the time that is spent from clinical research to patient access is an issue in terms of equitable access of patients all over Europe. Next, please. I think you skipped some of my slides. Is that correct? If you go back.
Yes, I see there's one missing. And that's
okay.
That's the one with all the research topics there.
Okay, so if I present the research topics, we will enter into research on access, dealing with actual patient access to innovative oncology medicines within European member states, using the OCI institutional network and cooperation with ESMO and other organizations. We will work on transparency, on investment related to research and development, and we noted in an early research that it seems that publications on research and developments per cost per drug reaching the market, that the more the researcher is connected to pharma, the higher the expenditure is being presented. And that raises questions on objectivity of those data. So transparency could really play a role in contributing to realistic data in this field. We want to look into accountability through expenditure trends of innovative cancer medicines in various states, and on the evidence that is used for filing the drugs and going through the procedure, because there also seem to be decisions on access of drugs that are based on less firm data than would be expected. And last, we look into innovative purchasing arrangements and new policy initiatives to see whether actually pricing can be reduced. And this should contribute to the goals that you see in this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Wim and also to Ingrid for those presentations. Before we move to the next presentation, I just want to say there are well over 300 of you now participating, so please do send in your questions. You're being a bit shy at the moment, but we do want to hear your questions, so please do enter them on the Q&A, and we'll come to them in the discussion part of the session shortly. So now we're going to be hearing from the research perspective, and I want to introduce Dr. Thierry Philippe, who is Chief Executive Officer of the Institut Curie Paris, and also the President of the Organization of European Cancer Institutes. And he's going to be talking the importance of research in medicine prices. Professor Thierry, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can you listen to me?
Yes,
yeah.
You're
I'm here today to express first the strong support of the Organization of European Cancer Institute for the European Fair Pricing Network. Our working group, led by Wim van Aerten, has been involved in building the network, and the OECI will be at your side to achieve your very important goal. In this brief presentation, I will talk about France as president of the Institut Curie. I will talk about OECI, and I will, of course, support your main objective. Next slide. France is a good example of the importance of the subject. As you know, the entire health system is paid by the Social Security, and the current budget, I have to point out that this is a budget before COVID. The current budget of the Social Security was 210 billion. Cancer account for 16.5 billion, which is in fact a very small part of the budget for the leading cause of death in France. In 2008, cancer drug account for 1 billion, and in 2018, 10 years later, 3 billion. This has increased by 2 billion in 10 years. And the problem is that since 2019, this budget is increasing by 1 billion a year. And if it's remained like that, in 2025, the cost will be 10 billion, which means that almost 100% of the annual increase in the Social Security budget will be used only for cancer drugs. Obviously, this is not possible. And this is why your network is so important to help people to make clean decisions. I should point out that the great advantage of the French system is that in 30 years of career, I never had to refuse expensive drugs to a patient, rich or poor. And this is not the case all over Europe, when some patients just ask to receive the standard treatment that cure patients in the more rich Western country. Next slide. OECI is a European interest group. We are not individuals, but we are institutions. 105 members, 95 from Europe, 21 countries of the European Union. 50 of our members are comprehensive cancer center or clinical cancer center after a designation and accreditation process labeled by ISQUASI International Society for Quality Accreditation. And the 3 European priorities for OCI fit very well with the European Fair Pricing Network: fighting inequality, increased survival of good and poor prognostic tumor, and beating pediatric cancer. Accreditation is our main activity, a major program of OCI, but we also work on patient relation with doctor, pathology, economics, outcome research, and survivorship. And fighting inequality is something that we can do together. And we also set up recently DigiCore projects for outcome research, and it is obvious that economic aspect should be included in all protocols of outcome research. Next slide, please. We share with you the urgent need for effective and affordable cancer drugs, not only in Western countries, but also in Eastern and Southern part of Europe. We share the goal of research in this area, and we can help your network to assess the costs and the difference between countries. Our comprehensive cancer center all have a lot of research, and we can also help you understand what part of drug discovery is already paid during the initial research part by public funds. This is an important part that we don't want to pay 2 times the same part of the process of research. And of course, we need academic research and independence, and we think you can help, or you can help OCI in this regard. Next slide. As you know, Europe is currently working on the objective of a cancer mission and on a cancer control plan. And as a member of the Assembly of the Cancer Mission, I can tell you that the defined action clearly make use of the existing network, and of course, at the level of all the countries in Europe. And I am sure that we can answer several calls of the mission together, OCI and the new network. And then I want to say long life to the European Fair Pricing Network, a very, very useful network. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Philippe. Some really strong statistics there. 10 billion cost by 2025 in France. It's big, big figures. So Ingrid earlier on talked about the importance of patients. This is, this is all for the patients, and it would be a big gap if we were not to hear from the patient side. And I'm delighted to introduce Kaiser Immonen, who is the Director of Policy at the European Patients Forum. She is also co-chair of the Patients Consumer Working Party at the European Medicines Agency. And Kaiser will be talking on fair price and transparency at the patient perspective. Thanks, Kaiser.
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you to ECL for inviting me to speak today. First of all, congratulations on the launch of this network. It's very timely and very important. I'm not going to show you slides with numbers or any slides. In fact, I'm just going to speak briefly on a few things from the perspective of the European Patients Forum, which is not a cancer patient organization, but a patients umbrella organization across diseases and across the entire EU. So first, I'm going to explain why this matters for patients beyond cancer. Then I'm going to say a few words about what we consider as elements of fair prices and what role transparency plays in this, and where we would like to go in the next steps. So it matters, the affordability matters because it is a key aspect of access to medicines for all patients. A patient will only benefit from a new and innovative therapy if it is available to them in a timely manner, if it's accessible and affordable to all who need it. And lack of access, including affordability, is obviously a concern to patients across Europe in all disease areas nowadays. Cancer is a good example, I think, because in cancer we see there is an important trend in rising costs. And of course, it also represents an opportunity cost for other disease areas if an increasing part of budget is going to pay for expensive cancer drugs. We have worked with our members on access to healthcare in general, not specifically on affordability, but it's very clear that great inequalities persist across the EU. Just to give you one example from multiple sclerosis, a 2017 survey by the MS platform showed that the percentage of patients with MS who received disease-modifying treatments, any from a range of options, varied from 100% in Malta and 80% in Sweden and Austria to only 30% in Hungary and Bulgaria and just 15% in Poland. A second example, which many of you will be very familiar with, is some kinds of advanced therapies, such as gene therapy products, without naming any in particular, which promise potentially transformative cure for the individual patient, but come with completely eye-watering prices. Now, this doesn't mean that in all cases, problems of access to medicines are because of price, or that this is the main barrier in all cases, but we do know that it is certainly the case in some. And as has been mentioned by previous speakers, many countries ration access to certain medicines or don't make them available at all because they consider them too expensive in relation to the benefit or unaffordable for the healthcare system. So we agree that it's important and timely now to have a debate about what a fair price could be for different types of medicines. Now, EPF hasn't got a definition of a fair price that I can give you today, but we have considered several factors that we feel need to be included when thinking about pricing of new medicines. And first of all, the added value for patients absolutely should be a very strong consideration. But there are also other factors, such as affordability for the system, the need to ensure universal access, budget impact, and also considering the cost of research and development that go into the drug, including public investment. And a fair price should, of course, also provide a fair return on investment for the pharmaceutical companies that develop the medicines. And I think there is a scope here for discussion of what a fair return of investment is. And at the moment, we cannot really talk very much about it because we don't know what goes into the price. So we have called in the past for the development of what we call the framework for fair and equitable access, which should maximize the societal benefit and patient access whilst avoiding this unacceptable impact on healthcare budgets. And it would have to involve several elements, including, of course, member state collaboration on price negotiations and horizon scanning and HTA, with patients' involvement, increasing transparency, and also adoption of some common principles in the EU for how valuable innovation can be encouraged and how it should be rewarded, and also how continued investment in R&D can be supported. Now, transparency is essential in our view for the accountability of the healthcare systems towards patients and citizens that they serve. And from a patient perspective, we see transparency in sort of two directions. First, obviously, towards more the industry side of the equation, we would like to see greater transparency on the cost of medicines and R&D. We think this is absolutely necessary to support more informed decision-making, particularly, but not only by payers. Also, patients would like to understand better what goes into a price and what kind of request is reasonable, and what kind of different factors are reflected in the end product. So that includes better understanding the role of companies' investment in R&D, but also the role of public funding, which has been mentioned. And very importantly, we also believe in the transparent sharing of research and research data openly to increase the efficiency and quality of the research and to reduce duplication and redundant clinical trials, for example, which are unethical from a patient perspective. But there is also the other direction, and that goes more maybe to the member states direction. So we would like to see greater transparency of the entire system for patients and citizens, for example, on what criteria pricing and reimbursement decisions are taken and who is taking them. Now, a last point that I would like to address is about the value of innovation. There has been concerns about the quality of new treatments, particularly in cancer. And to some extent, I think, yes, this is a very important issue as well. Well, not only to some extent, to a large extent, because innovation is something that brings added value to the patient. So we see that it's only when the patient's priorities are fully embedded in the research and development process that at the end of the day, you get a better quality product out of it that brings more added value. So we would like to see patients' views being integrated into this process from beginning to the end, including patients' perceptions on quality of life, patient-relevant clinical and quality of life endpoints for clinical trials, and patients' views on benefits and weighed against the risks they are willing to take, which can be different from disease to disease and situation to situation. This is recognized in principle, but in reality, it's far from being the new normal yet. So we need to look at the uncertainties that exist currently and bring in patients into the research process to get better research, better products, also more appropriate setting of research priorities, and to develop new and better measures for measuring these patient-relevant endpoints. So in conclusion, I would just like to highlight that from our perspective, public investment in health, the whole spectrum of it, including medicines, are political choices. And we would like to move towards a framework that supports innovation that brings benefits to patients and is also accessible and affordable to health systems. There needs to be a common understanding of what innovation means, what value means, what fair price means, and how that needs to be encouraged, because at the moment, not everyone is talking the same language. And I don't think the solution is going to be one size fits all. We'll probably need different strategies to tackle orphan drugs, personalized cancer therapies, for example, and the development of new antibiotics or other neglected areas that are less commercially attractive, let's say. So we will be very interested to see the results of the research done in the framework of Efpn and following this network. And of course, in the context of the new pharmaceutical strategy, I think it will be important to have a more granular body of evidence that will help in identifying and formulating the right policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Kaiser. And I think I heard, involving patients to talk about risks they are prepared to take, risks they are not prepared to take, and about involving them in a common language about innovation and value. So thank you very much indeed for that. So we are coming to the part now where we want to hear from you with questions. We have got some questions coming in. Please do keep sending them. The questions will be for any of the speakers, but also for my panel, two of whom you have not heard from yet. So I do want to bring in some more partners of the Efpn to hear why they're getting involved. I'm being joined by Mark McKeelis, who is the CEO of Stand Up to Cancer Flanders, which offers patient support and raises funds for research and carries out advocacy. And also I'm joined by Professor Thomas Czerny, who is president of the Swiss Cancer League and a member of the Scientific Advisory Board of the Efpn. He's an oncologist and a professor at the University of Bern and a board member of Swissmedic. So thank you to you two for joining me. And also Ingrid is also a member of my panel. I want to come to Mark, first of all, please. I want to know, what's resonated from what actually you've heard, and just to find out the situation in Belgium. Why did you, as a CEO of a cancer society, decide to invest in this project? Mark.
Yes, thank you. Well, the situation in Belgium is like everywhere in Europe, I guess. Expenditures for new drugs are increasing steeply. Over the last 5 years, we have seen an increase of 15 to 20%, and also the coming years that will be the case. We also see and are welcoming a lot of new therapies, but if we see that they can cost up to 700,000 per treatment, we are really worrying. We are worrying because we are representing cancer patients. We have to fight for cancer patients and for our donors. So we see an emerging threat for the sustainability of the entire health system, and so we have to act all together. Cancer organizations, governments and the pharmaceutical sector. We have to act together and to talk and to go for a constructive dialogue. And from the part of cancer patients and cancer organizations, we think we have to tackle this at an international level. Countries and organizations from all countries like ours have to cooperate, and in order to have an equal dialogue with the multinational pharma companies. So that's why, yes, we were very enthusiastic to participate and to invest in this initiative, because our common goal is, we think, going for fair prices. And to get there, I think we have to get to the table also with some research and data from our sides, but all in the hope that we can come to only one goal, one common goal, which is fair prices if we see the challenges we are facing. So yeah, we were very enthusiastic, and we really hope this will be a success.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Some strong language there again, an emerging threat. Let me come on to Thomas. Thomas, you're an oncologist. Why did you decide to join this project as a part of the Scientific Advisory Committee? And how would you say this research can help patients and their quality of care?
I think, as we already have seen, it's a major concern in all richer Western northern countries of Europe that we have a lot of progress. And being an oncologist sitting vis-a-vis a patient and the family, you have often the situation that you have desperate people and you have new drugs, which could be the ones that would be valuable for this patient. And you are not really able to provide them in the right time the access to the drug. And this really touches to the fundamental self-consciousness of our profession. And more so, we have seen that in all the other countries, the situation is alike. Being a small, rich country, not being able to give the drug to all the patients in need, or only to the richer ones who can afford them. Two-class society, that's not something which we would like to have. And so it's a necessity to come out of this dysfunctional system. And when you would like to move the political floor, you have to provide data and to show them where actually is the most need to improve things, and also to motivate the politicians to make it something of their own interest. In a democracy, politicians can be very, very helpful if they see that they actually can get something to improve. And this very much was the reason 3 years ago we started to have a health technology assessment program in Switzerland, where we gave a grant for 3 million, which actually will continue. But in the same time, we don't have too much money. And that's one of the reasons we have actually to collaborate with other countries in order to be effective. And the advisory board in the European Fair Price Network actually would like to bring things together in order to make a rather big progress of high quality data in order to be able to move the political field.
Thanks very much, Thomas. Absolutely. I'm going to come to Ingrid next. Ingrid, you've heard many of the talks so far, and as chair, what do you take as positives from what you've heard so far, and what is the next step?
Yeah, so it's many positives. I think maybe one of the most important ones is that we partner up with both our national governments and also within the EU system. We have to partner up also between the patient organizations and the academia. And it's just like Thomas said, I think the Efpn works like a tandem bike. It's research and advocacy working side by side. so that we can, the researchers can provide evidence for better advocacy, which spills over into evidence-based decision-making in cooperation between us and the authorities. So I think there is a lot of very positive trends here. So the next step for us is, of course, both in the research field and in the advocacy field. But within the research field, we need to now work through the steps of the Efpn, which patients gets what, for what prices, and how much did we as the cancer societies and the public taxpayers invest in the development of these medicines? Are we getting value for money, and how do we reorganize innovation to better address patient needs? So we need to find better solutions. And then when we get these answers, we will work in an ongoing motion to try to change the system towards more transparency. So it's I'm very excited about this, actually.
Thank you, Ingrid. Now I want to come to the Minister Bent Høie. Minister, in your intervention, you talked about the need to balance the power between health systems and the pharma industry, and calling for a process that will give us an agreed social contract between pharmaceutical companies and governments. Should industry itself play a role in this process?
Thank you. Yes, I think industry itself should be involved. On this, we need to work together with the pharmaceutical industry to achieve the results we want. This is why I already have entered into a dialogue here in Norway with stakeholders, including with the industry. We want, of course, the pharmaceutical industry to remain a profitable business, including with sufficient financial strength to ensure future innovation in medical technology. This is important both for the patients, for the health system, and for nations, of course. But those innovations are of little help if patients have no access, or only a small portion of patients have access. In Norway, as well as in Europe, where our health system is based on universal health coverage, we need to be able to offer new technologies to all on an equal basis. This is why a sustainable price level for new medical technology is so crucial. And I frankly expect the industry to take this point and work together with us in identifying better ways of establishing a more sustainable and fair price level in the future. And again, achieving greater transparency on cost is an important step in the right direction. All these issues will be on the agenda when I, in cooperation with the WHO Europe office, invite for a high-level conference in Oslo during the first half of 2020. And again, we need to, of course, include the industry in this work to find a common platform for a new social contract of how we deal with these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, I'm going to move to Sylvain now. Sylvain, the Transparency Directive attempted a few years ago to tackle issues around delays in placing new medicines on the market, but that ran into problems at a national level. How does the Commission view this issue, and will it try to revive the Transparency Directive?
Yeah, hi again. Thank you for the question. This is a bit of a technical issue. What you're talking about that the Commission proposed a few years ago, it was actually revising an earlier piece of legislation that had been in place for a while, which the Commission proposed to revise, and the member states did not wish to take up and revise indeed. Then this directive has a name that's called transparency, but it's a bit of a misleading name because it's about the transparency of the pricing system, and it is actually creating a certain number of requirements on the pricing and reimbursement authorities to identify and make more transparent the steps they are taking towards the industry in setting prices. This is what it is about. So it's about transparency of the pricing, and the burden of transparency in this text is mainly on the public authorities, and it's in the discussions they are having. So this is a legislation that is if the member states wish to discuss the application of it and the challenges that this legislation represents, this is of course something they would be very able to do in the conversation we would want to launch.
Thanks, Sylvain. I want to bring in Vim now. We heard about dialogue with research. I want to ask, is the Efpn planning for dialogue with research-based companies, and will Pharma be involved in the Efpn?
We have had this discussion, and we think that it is wise to start as an independent agency or initiative first. And of course, we cannot do without a proper relationship with pharma and research-based companies. But the whole paradigm of working towards a sustainable pricing and financial system within this industry will probably have to change, and it will take quite some years, I fear, because there are so many interests, and it is a very complex system. But we should at least set the first steps in order to get on the way at all. But of course, there need to be discussions, especially through our advocacy group, with pharma and research-based companies into developing new initiatives and new schedules, for which we also have done research in terms of what are alternative schemes in pricing setup. Because, for instance, the part of public funding in research and development is often neglected when it comes to licensing and patents and the monopolistic pricing situation.
Okay. And do you think you're going to get pushback from pharmaceuticals research-based companies on that, or do you think?
Undoubtedly, because huge interests are involved, and changing stakeholder interests in such a system is very complicated.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll move on to that in a minute. But I just want to bring in Thierry. Thierry, do you see any opportunity to leverage the EU Cancer Mission and seek more investment into research, leading to greater affordability of medicines? Would that help, in your opinion? Thierry, are you on camera? Would somebody else like to maybe take that?
Can you
yes,
hear
we
me?
can hear you, Thierry.
It's okay. Then the answer is probably yes, because I think that in the objective of the mission, we can find a place to answer the question of how to fight inequality. And I want to stress one point that OSA is working extensively now, is outcome research. I think it's very important. It is very important to try to understand if in real life, before to ask the question of availability of a drug, we need to know if a drug that is effective in a highly selective group of patients will be also effective in outcome research, which means in real life, where everybody will receive the drug. That's the first point. The second point is that we need academic trial. Let's take an example. Nobody in the industry wants to make trial on the length of immunotherapy when immunotherapy is effective. This is a very important price issue. And we need to set up academic trial of duration of expensive treatment, academic trial, and not only with industry. And we need also to perform this kind of study with, let's say, real economists. This is not only a problem of doctor and researcher and so on. We need to make network between researcher who know very well what they have to ask in cancer, but with people that know very well also economy and the issue of public health. And we need to do that. And I am absolutely convinced we can do that between OCI and this new network.
Thank you, Thierry, for that. That's great. I think I really do need to ask a thorny question. I'll come to Mark first of all, maybe, and then if Ingrid wants to add. So what is the definition of a fair price according to the EFPN? What is a fair price? How do you define that? And will you collaborate with other initiatives beyond cancer? Mark, first of all. Or Ingrid, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sure. So it's important to say that we are not against profit. It's really important to underline that. So fair prices do not equal low prices, which I think maybe some people misunderstand. We want truly innovative products to reach patients quickly. That is why we do this. And innovation should be probably very well rewarded. But there is enough room between low prices and very high prices to find the common ground for a fair price. And to do that, we need transparency. So that is really the way that I look upon what a fair price is. It's something in between the low and the very excessively high prices that we've seen many present today as a sustainability problem. Yeah, and what was the next question, Jackie?
I think you've answered it, Ingrid.
Yeah.
Mark, you come in about how do you define a fair price?
Well, Ingrid answered the questions very well. Once again, we are not against the pharmaceutical sector, and we accept that profits should be there, and that research and development cost have to be paid. But fair prices means that it's sustainable in the end for everybody, for the governments, for the pharmaceutical sector, and for the patients. So we have a common goal here. We absolutely have a common goal, and the whole idea of EFPN is to get into a constructive dialogue with the pharmaceutical sector.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Let me come on to some of the other questions now that are coming in. Let me look and see. Hold on one second. So yes, will you collaborate with other initiatives beyond cancer, Mark? Is that that was the second part of that question?
A bigger one.
Will you collaborate with other initiatives beyond cancer, maybe?
Well, this is an initiative of the European Cancer Leagues and the cancer organizations. So in the first place, we have to take care of cancer medicines, but I hope that all the research and the knowledge that we are bringing together is relevant for other medicines also.
Okay, I'm just coming on to some more questions in terms of how can, this is a question for Bent Høie, the Minister, how can national agencies, regulatory authorities introduce transparency at the national level?
Well, that's a very difficult question, and I think that is one of also the problems that have put us in this situation, because on a national level, especially if you are a small country like Norway, it's very difficult to stand alone and require openness and transparency, for example, when it comes to prices, because then you will be in a situation that you actually not is able to have the prices down, and we know that the official prices are totally different than the prices that is actually paid for the medicines. But if you are open with the prices, then you will not get any reduced prices. So as a country, especially as a small country, you cannot do this alone. So of course, in the political debate in the parliament, I meet colleagues that says, okay, Norway has to take this position and be a first runner and so on. But if we do that, then the Norwegian patient will be the one that pay the price for us to be the first runners if we take that position. So that is also why it's so important to have this kind of initiatives, that we work together and also work together with the industry, so we can go through this together and find solutions that is win-win solutions, and that for example, not the Norwegian patient is paying the price for us to be more principled in these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Let me come on to Kaiser from the patient's point of view. Kaiser, do you think that more focus should be given to finalising EU HTA regulation, or focusing on regional voluntary cooperation?
Okay, well, speaking as a patient advocate, speaking on behalf of EPF, yes, we think that the European level HTA is an indispensable element. And I think here we run into some similar problems that have been described by Minister Høie just now, i.e. the lack of political will, the lack of solidarity on behalf of member states. It's clear that in order to succeed, it needs to be fully supported by the member states, and it cannot simply function as a voluntary bit that you add on to separate national analysis. We would also like to see, as an extension of that, a more European approach towards price negotiation, but also potentially exploring the benefits of joint procurement for certain critical medicines that need to be available to everybody, and where perhaps there are not that many patients across the EU, so rarer diseases would make maybe a good example here. But obviously, as the minister said on transparency as well, we are calling on member states to show solidarity and to work together for the benefit of all European patients. And unfortunately, until now, we haven't seen that, and we really hope that we will see more of that in future, as the case continues to build for the benefits of this collaboration.
Okay, thank you for that, Kaiser. I'm going to come to a last question to the floor, but I want to see if any of the speakers have any final points they want to make. But before I do that, a question to Sylvain. Sylvain, do you think that national governments are working to change their legislation to enable more transparency in pricing, or we'll see different trends?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sylvain, thanks.
Yeah, so I'm a bit uncomfortable with the concept of transparency, because sometimes I'm not sure what we actually refer to. So because we can talk about the transparency of prices, the transparency of pricing, the transparency of costing. I mean, there are many different aspects that we refer to. What is important is that a market entry of a medicines it has different steps, but actually serves the same common purpose, which is that a product that is useful is actually accessible for the patients, but also and for the health professionals that are actually accompanying the patients through this process. So the authorization given by the Commission for centrally authorized product in the EU is given on the basis of efficacy and safety. But then there needs to be other public authorities that intervene to define whether this treatment is cost effective compared to what is there, whether this is actually good value for money for the health protection and health insurance system to reimburse them. And those are not delays. Those are not administrative burden. They are political decisions that are very important to the authorities, and that serves public policy objectives that are very legitimate. So we should not fall into this caricaturing that those steps are waste of time, that they are delaying access and so on. They're also very relevant from a medical point of view and from a public health point of view. So I think when we look at transparency, we should look across the system. It's from clinical trials, from the scientific information that is available at the moment of authorization or not, how this is actually used through collecting more data for the HTA and for the pricing and reimbursement authorities' needs. And this has to become more a continuum rather than in the separated steps where that can actually make it look like delays, and this has to be looked through this way. And it's through this system that transparency should come out. If I can answer your question this way, I hope I did.
Thank you, Sylvain. Thank you very much indeed for that. We have got lots of questions, and I'm afraid we haven't been able to cover them all. So apologies, but thank you very much indeed for your questions into us. I want to now bring us towards the end of the event, and I'm delighted to invite Johan van der Gronden, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Dutch Cancer Society. He's going to give us some closing remarks and tell us his key takeaways from the launch. So thank you very much, Johan.
Thank you, Jackie. I see you've been practicing over the weekend to pronounce my surname, but you're doing fine with Johan. We'll try Scheveningen and van der Gronden next time. But ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful that you've been with us for a fascinating 1.5 hours. I think we typically have a case here of an idea whose time has come. I'm actually amazed by the concurrence of views, the urgency and the relevance of the matter. And it's quite interesting to hear the Honorable Minister of Norway, one of the richest countries in Europe, actually saying that in 1 out of 5 cases, after negotiations, he has to decline access of medicines in a country that already spends 10.5% of its GDP on health issues. If Norway cannot afford those medicines, then who can? So there's something broken here and we need to fix it. Interestingly, also from Oslo comes the phrase that we need to seek a new power balance between government and industry. So I'll come back to that, because your call for a new social contract is, I think, exactly what the Efpn is after, and I'll close with that in 2-3 minutes after. In 2 or 3 minutes from now. Sylvain Giraud has been pretty clear that the EU will, in the very near future, evaluate and overhaul its basic pharma legislation. So just release a new pharma strategy, but overhauling the legal framework. That is a very promising and important element of this endeavor. Then Wim van Harten, who's pioneered some of the ideas behind the Efpn, has drawn our attention that even a few years ago, in one survey, 65% of respondents actually say it's not just limited to Oslo. Mr. Benthoy, you're in good company. In 65% of cases, financial constraints limit access to healthcare in 65% of cases. So the CEO of the Institut Curie, Thierry Philippe, underscores that the unsustainability of these rapidly rising costs in cancer medicines is just an untenable situation. And Benthoy also drew to the erosion of public confidence. So I've heard many colleagues saying, listen, pharma is not the enemy, the pharmaceutical industry is not the enemy. I couldn't concur more. We have a joint interest to restore public confidence in your mission, in our mission. And actually, this is a handshake. This is not a slap in the face. So interestingly, Thierry Philippe also came up with a figure where he says, and I don't know if it's the case in France or which is a broader European case, but even if it's limited to France, it's very interesting. He says 17% of all these drugs that come to market in the end actually have early beginnings with public spending. And I wish to remind you that our cancer societies are investing hundreds of millions of civil society money, of donations towards early development, towards research, both basic and applied sciences. So 17%, and we never see it back. We have no clue whether this has an effect on the price, because in the end, none of these drugs that in early stages have actually been pioneered by public spending and by civil society organizations like cancer societies make it to the market, because ultimately it's the private sector taking it to the market. So we need, and then I'm with Kajsa Monen of the European Medicines Agencies, we need a much more clarity on the importance of public spending, but also in the build-up of prices and the transparency in the whole R&D chain. And even if transparency is a big buzzword, it's totally clear that the current R&D chain is intransparent, and we can't continue to work with that. I'm coming back to be brief and not take more of your time. I'm coming back to the words of Bent Høie and the social contract. I actually love that. I'm a classic civil society guy. I do believe that ultimately it's within this triangle of government, industry, and civil society where we can decide upon fairness and reasonability of prices. I would love to invite other council leagues who have, tipped their toe in the water, but couldn't find either the courage or the money to join us fast. Just get in touch with the European Council League in Brussels, or with my fellow colleague here, Guy Muller, who spent 1.5 years of his life actually to make this happen, and make sure that this becomes an unstoppable movement. Time has come, patient needed. We need to restore the social contract between pharma, between civil society, and between government. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. It can't be just contingent that if you live in Berlin or in Dublin or in Nicosia or Amsterdam, there's a difference in your access to treatment or a difference in the prices that are actually being reimbursed. That needs to stop. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Johan. I need to say a very, very big thank you to all our speakers, particularly the Minister Bent Høie, for giving up his very important time to speak to us today, and to you for all listening and your questions. The event recording will be available so others can watch it and you can watch again. I would encourage any journalists to reach out to the leagues via Guy for more information, and we do look forward to reading your articles. I really hope that this event has given you pause for thought and has made you as motivated as Guy at the beginning and Johan has now said. We talked about a double ambition, about research for high quality data and advocacy to translate those findings into political asks, working in tandem within a broad network to ensure real patient change. So with that on mind, I would like to say a real thank you for watching and for taking part. I'm Jackie Thornton, and I wish you a very good morning on the launch of the EFPN today.